afternoon. I'm so glad you could join me today. And I have a lovely lady here that she's with an organization called the Alexandria House.
Yes.
And I want to introduce you now to my sweet lady here, and her name is Amanda Dickstrom. Good afternoon, Amanda.
Good afternoon, Jane. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're here.
Yeah.
So could you tell me a little bit about what your organization is doing for everybody here in Minneapolis and St. Paul
Sure.
and Minnesota?
We're one of several nonprofit agencies that works with domestic violence and sexual violence victims. Alexandra House is located, like you said, in Blaine, in the northern metro area. So we primarily serve victims from the North Metro, but we will, as you said, work with victims from all over the state. Absolutely. We've been around since 1977. So
What?
we grew. It was a
Wow.
started out of a concerned citizens out of a church basement who started a hotline. They'd heard people were in need in the community.
Really?
Yep. And so they started a hotline and thought, well, let's see what happens. Let's see if anybody calls. And they did right away. And they realized, okay, now we have all these calls. We need to be able to do something with these women and kids who are being abused in their homes. And so they worked together and got funding and started the first shelter for us was in Fridley in 1980. And
oh my goodness sakes.
it's in a little house. We outgrew that and moved to Blaine and moved again. So now we've been in our current location since about early 90s. So
wow, that's wonderful. And you have women and children that can come there?
we have lots of services for both victims of domestic violence and victims of sexual violence. And so their needs are often different. But we will shelter about 800 women and kids every year. About 35 women and kids at any given time are being provided 24-hour free shelter.
There's a need.
There's a need. There's a need. Sadly, I mean, I say often, you know, I would love to, you know, work myself out of a job.
Right, exactly.
That we wouldn't need to, you know, do what we do anymore. But that's just hasn't been the case.
No, I know it's terrible.
So we have our shelter program, but we also work with a lot of women who don't need shelter, who might need help going to court or want to go to a support group or are trying to decide what to do in their early stages and want our crisis line or
you have a crisis line.
We have a 24-hour crisis line, absolutely. Maybe you got out of the relationship but you need help staying out or financial assistance or daycare assistance or help finding a job, and we have advocates that can work with you in your home past kind of that immediate crisis. So we really try and look at the whole picture from your entry point for maybe you are just kind of disclosed at a hospital to somebody who might have been out for 2 years but still needs that support services from their advocate. So we're working with around 3,000 victims a year between primary victims and secondary victims of sexual violence or domestic violence. So sadly, the need is out there, and our agency has seen an increase in 26% more services to victims over the past 2 years. So,
don't you people see how horrible this is? What's going on out here in our country? The whole country is. It's a crisis.
It is. It's an epidemic. It's a public health epidemic. Absolutely, and it's. Our economy is difficult, and I think people often tie, because I lost my job or because this now I'm
get meaner.
And that's not it's not a tie. It's not the economy's bad, so now he's abusing. No, but if you already have those tendencies, if you are already an abuser, and you lose your job or you lose your housing. It's a stressor. It's a trigger that can absolutely make things worse.
I believe that's so true. I believe that's so true.
It's very similar to alcohol. Alcohol will not cause you to be an abuser, but it certainly permits you to, if you already are an abuser, it gives you permission to act in a way and to do things that you wouldn't normally do.
Yeah, exactly.
And Jane, I know you know this, but abuse is really about power and control. That's what it comes down to. It's all about whether it's sexual violence or domestic violence. It's all about one person needing to control someone else. And physical violence is a tool in a toolbox. There's lots of different tools.
That makes lots of sense.
Emotional abuse, calling somebody,
Yeah,
degrading names for years so you feel like you're nothing.
And he feels like he's a powerful, almighty ruler because he could call you those names.
If I'm frustrated with you and I'm an abuser and I've lost some power and I come and I take my fist and I punch a hole in the wall right next to where your head was, I didn't physically abuse you, right?
No, but mentally,
what do you know? What do you know that
abuse.
He's that's what he's going to do to me next time. So
I better behave.
So there's lots of different kinds of abuse.
And then you get frightened.
You do, and
I used to live being frightened, and it's nothing worse than being frightened to death in your own home. Mm-hmm. It's just horrendous what's going on. I don't know what we're gonna do, but I think we need to get education out for these young people to start learning different ways of acting out.
And there are a lot of great organizations in the Twin Cities in Minnesota, like ours, and that can help victims of domestic violence and sexual violence. And I would just encourage, if you're going through this, to pick up the phone and call. And we can connect you with...
What's your phone number?
Our 24-hour crisis line is 763-780-2330. And you can call us and we can direct you to a program that's closer to your home. If we're not the ones, if you'd rather work with somebody closer to your home, we can certainly direct that call. But everything's free for every program, and so there's help out there.
God, thank God.
Absolutely.
I've had a lot of organizations that have come on my show, and I get so excited every time I meet one of you people that are out there helping. It just enlightens me inside to feel that, hey, there's some place for people to go.
There are people that there are people that care, and what's happening to you in private in your home doesn't have to happen, and it's not okay. And I think if you take off your if you put on your neighbor hat or your I'm going to my kid's school hat, and I think in Minnesota especially we see it as not our business. If something's happening in somebody else's home, or
it is your business.
if something's it doesn't seem quite right.
If you hear screaming and yelling over there, call 911.
It is. It is your business, absolutely.
It is our business.
And the only way that we as a society start saying that this isn't acceptable, it's not enough to not do it yourself. It's not enough to not be an abuser. It's to be an example of how to be, a leader. It's to be to speak out against, untruths, or when you see, a even disrespectful, words or joke by somebody, and when you hear that. You hear your neighbor screaming, you need to call somebody. That's kind of
right away.
That is the.
As soon as I hear violence in my area, my home area, if I hear violence any place I've ever lived, I call 911. And I call them, and they can come, and then they maybe leave, and nothing gone on.
Well, and
at least it's a precautionary thing that, hey, at least I called.
Yeah.
If she's in trouble over there, or some child is in trouble over there, or he's in trouble over there, somebody's going to come and help him.
Well, and it's a fine line. I get asked all the time how I have my friend, my sister, my loved one is in this situation. How do I help them? And you can't force somebody to leave, and you shouldn't. You shouldn't.
Oh, no.
It has to be. They've been told what to do long enough. They need to decide for themselves that it can do. And actually, leaving is.
It's very difficult.
It's very difficult, and it's one of the most dangerous times for women. And I hate
to
to say that.
I
hate to say that because I don't want somebody not to leave because of that. But it is dangerous. And so the best thing that you can do for your friend or loved one who's been in that situation for a long time.
You'll help them.
Is believe them and tell them that regardless that you will you will be there, and that doesn't mean you have to put yourself or your own family in harm's way. But it's it takes women an average of 7 times to leave before they've actually left for good. So
that's about right.
So the best thing you can do is have patience, and she will leave when she can, and sometimes she doesn't want to leave. She wants it just to stop.
She thinks if she loves him enough, it'll stop. I used to think if I loved him enough, he'd stop doing that. But that doesn't happen that way.
Typically not. No.
No, it doesn't happen that way.
And often. she's scared. She
Oh,
probably
yeah.
has kids. She may or may not have lost her job already because of
Right,
this. So she
right.
may or may not have access to her finances.
It's true.
She likely has
true.
very little self-esteem because he's told her for so long that
Yeah.
she's worth nothing.
Yeah.
And oftentimes many people that she's been sheltered or isolated from her friends or family.
Yeah, they usually isolate you from, they don't want you to have any friends, they don't want you to have any family. The further they can get you away from them, the happier they are.
And a lot of times,
Then they're possessing.
absolutely. And a lot of times, it's hard to watch a loved one go through this, and so many people will say, "I just can't do it anymore."
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
they don't have the support person
No.
there. So it's really difficult to leave. And but
hard.
every time somebody calls our crisis line, it's one step closer.
Yay.
And our goal isn't to tell a victim what to do.
Oh,
Our
no.
goal is to tell them, here are your options, and we believe that you can make this choice,
Yes.
and we're going to lay out a path here for you
Right.
to support you to make this
Yes.
choice a viable option, leaving a
Right.
viable option for you if you want. If you want to stay, we can work with you on how to stay safer.
Right, stay
Make a
safer.
safety plan. It doesn't mean you will be safe, but it can. You can set up
Right.
some steps.
It could be some tell them and guide them into
But-
maybe a little bit of a understanding of how to deal with it themselves.
But we can't tell people
no,
what
I
to
know,
do.
No, I know we can't. No, you don't want to tell them what to do. You just want to help them.
And so I think for those of us that don't have this kind of in our everyday life, it's 1 in 3 women will be a victim at some point during
Right.
her life. But I think, this is not an issue that is on everybody's forefront, every day.
No, you're right.
But
no.
there's a role you can play in that. Even if it's not happening in your life, you can, volunteer at a number of agencies. You can
Exactly.
be a role model to,
Young
kids,
girls, young girls.
boys and girls who are
boys.
in this. I mean, I think our men have such an important role to play in this. In
They
that,
do have an important role.
I mean, our kids that are raised in abusive households,
Right.
see that as a norm when we know
Yeah,
that is not a norm for
But they-
men.
yeah, exactly. And I always think that the men that are advocates, there are men that
There
are
absolutely are.
out there that are just going to be fighting to help the woman. And I see this great big huge parade of all these men marching with signs that say, "Stop the violence, stop domestic violence, stop beating your wife, stop hitting her, stop." All these beautiful signs saying, and men, bikers, construction workers,
Police
police officers, firemen, everybody walking down this. I see it down St. Paul. I see it by the Capitol, and saying, "Stop this violence." And maybe if we do this and we have these big events and shows, maybe kids will see that.
Like, oh, this is how.
Wow, maybe I'm not supposed to do that to her.
We love our male volunteers at
Yeah,
Alexandra
the
House.
male volunteers are great.
They are great, and we do. We get that question gets asked. Do you let
Yeah.
men come volunteer? Absolutely.
sure
and
they
our kids
do.
flock to them because
To
they
the
they are
men.
starving for that positive
Yes.
male role model because in their lives they haven't had that.
No,
So-
that's what I mean, and that's why it's so important for you men to start helping us,
And-
because it's a big, huge problem in this country.
Kids who are raised in violent homes, I think parents also always think, moms think, I'm protecting them, they don't know what's going on. But
Yeah, but
really,
they
in
know.
reality, 80 to 90% of the kids know what's going on.
Oh,
Whether or not it's happening towards, the abuse is actually being directed towards them. And
No, it can be directed toward their mom.
And they say about half of the men who abuse their partner
Abuse of
also
kids.
abuse their kids.
Yeah, I believe that. I
So,
believe that they would.
it's-
Because it's normally that, if you're abusive
It's
and you have tendencies to be violent with your mate, then you're going to be violent with the children too.
And it's about, like I said, it's about power and control. So it's
Yeah.
about retaining that
Yep.
that power and control. So, we try and set up programs to help women get out, but also set up programs for people in the community come in and make sure that that our
Is there a
clients know they're
community- Is there a
supported.
program where men can go to get help to stop this violence?
Well-
Violence that's in them.
There are several programs in the Twin Cities that
good.
do work with offenders. So
Good.
we are not one of them.
No, but I bet there is-
But there are
places.
several places that do work with
Maybe
male
I should
male
have some
offenders.
of those come in.
I think we can talk after the show.
Let's
I
talk
can.
after the
Yes,
show.
I think that would be. I think it's a good
It's a good thing.
it's a good thing that we need to stop it. And to stop everybody talking, how will you end domestic violence? How will you end sexual violence? I mean, you have to end society's attitudes that this is acceptable. So we
attitudes,
have, I mean, that's a huge, it's not, they're stopping it for the individual family, which is what we try and
Right,
do.
that's what you're trying to do.
And we try and do the larger social change within our
Right.
community, but
Right.
it's about changing society's attitudes on even, the images that are portrayed in the media of women and girls.
It's terrible what they're doing.
It's the jokes that are told